Thank you everyone for being here. This is my first time here at the center. I'm very excited and looking forward to sharing some of this information with you guys. And let's see, whoops, wrong direction. All right, and to get started, the work that I'm going to be presenting on today has been funded by the U.S. Navy, the Fleet Forces Command, under the Marine Species Monitoring Program. I'm going to have a QR code at the end of the presentation so you can find out more information about the program itself and also what the Navy sponsors. It's quite impressive, all the money that goes into the monitoring program. And I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues and my co-authors. As everyone in here knows, this work never happens by just one person. It's a huge collaborative effort. So I'm thankful to the team of people that I work with, the program managers that are at HDR, and also NAVFAC, which is Naval Facilities Engineering Command in Norfolk, Virginia. And also a number of other individuals that I have here on our screen, our boat captains, our colleagues, our friends, and especially thank you to Melissa, to Kathleen, Bob for inviting me here to speak with you all. Like I said, I'm very, very happy to be here. Okay, a little bit of background information. I know I'm coming from afar, Virginia Beach. We are 150 miles to your south, so a little bit different area than here. We are a little bit busier than you are here, so be thankful that you don't have the craziness that we have in our area, although I know this does pick up, especially seasonally. But Virginia Beach and Norfolk are situated at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. As I mentioned, we're about 150 miles south of this area, and it's a very, very busy area in terms of commercial shipping, vessel traffic. As I mentioned, the Navy, the largest U.S. naval base in the country, is located within the Chesapeake Bay at Naval Station Norfolk. We have fishing vessels, recreational boats, so there's a lot of ship traffic that happens in our area. You can see the heat map in the upper right-hand corner of the screen showing all the vessel traffic that moves into and out of the bay on a daily basis. And anyone who's ever driven down the Eastern Shore also knows that there's a 17.5-mile bridge tunnel that spans the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay entrance. I just want to kind of point that out here. I don't know if this has a laser pointer. It does. Okay, so right here is that 17.5-mile bridge tunnel that spans there. Also outlined here is the seasonal management area. Many of you are probably familiar with that. It's in place for North Atlantic right whale protection, and I'll talk more about that area in just a little bit. And also depicted in here are some of the naval training exercise areas. These are right here off of Virginia Beach, just a few miles out where Navy does a lot of their training and testing. And it's also an area that humpback whales are known to occur seasonally. So in the background of this picture, you can actually see that bridge tunnel that I mentioned and humpback whales doing some impressive feeding behavior. And I will be guilty to admit that I'm showing a couple of cool humpback feeding behavior, but most of what we see are just the whales at the surface, not doing a whole lot of this exciting stuff. So moving on to one of the reasons that the humpbacks are here, at least seasonally, is to feed off these menhaden and other species of fish that are in the area. So here's my guilty pleasure showing you guys a cool little video that we collected from our drone of some bubble net feeding behavior. This was collected off of Virginia Beach. And as you can see, the whales are blowing bubbles in a circle. It's zoomed in a little bit, but as they're creating these circles, they're getting those fish together. You can see the fish kind of congregating there in the center and a couple of our humpbacks coming up in the center. Gulp. And as I mentioned, most of what we see in Virginia Beach is not this cool, but it's very cool, and I wanted to be able to share that with everyone here. We also have a YouTube channel, and I'll share that at the end as well, and all these videos, or some of them, are posted on there as well. Okay, so as many of you are familiar with, off the East Coast, we currently have numerous load zones or seasonal management areas where vessels greater than 65 feet are required to reduce their speeds down to 10 knots or less during certain peak right whale time periods. So in the mid-Atlantic, that is between November 1st and April 30th. Here is where that seasonal management area is off of Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and you guys have one right up here as well. And I use the word currently. Some of you may be aware that it's currently under consideration to have these slow zones removed. There is a public open period for commenting that ends on June 2nd. I also have a link for that at the end of the talk as well. So keep that in mind as we go through some of this information, because it is important. There is also what are known as dynamic management areas, and these are areas that are put in place when North Atlantic right whales are seen, groups of 3 or more, or acoustically detected using these, for instance, sound traps that are located up and down the East Coast. And again, this is the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel here in the background, and a juvenile North Atlantic right whale who is meandering around that area. So they do move in very close to shore, both within and outside of those seasonal management areas. And I'm sad to post a couple of these slides, but I do want to mention that there is ongoing unusual mortality events for both right whales and humpback whales, all up and down the East Coast. For North Atlantic right whales, we unfortunately had 2 deaths over in back-to-back years in 2023 and 2024. So for a population that is only at 380 individuals, there are 170 individuals in this unusual mortality event in this UME. Some of them are confirmed dead, some of them are just seriously injured, and some of them are injured or in poor health. And for the 2 that we had seen off of Virginia Beach, the one in the upper right is a male, and unfortunately they determined that he had suffered a catastrophic blunt force traumatic injury, impacted a large portion of the spinal column, and these injuries were consistent with a vessel strike. This female, our aerial survey team located offshore of Virginia. This was in March of 2024, and again, with this female, they were able to recover her body, bring her into shore, do a necropsy, and determine that the catastrophic injuries with the dislocation of the whale's spine and fractures to all vertebrae in the lower back are consistent with blunt force trauma from vessel strike prior to death. This one was especially sad. She was a new mom, so they assumed her calf was also part of that UME. Oops. Okay, for humpback whales, try not to be overwhelmed with all these numbers, but the main thing I wanted to show here is this is our mid-Atlantic region. Out of the 264 humpback whales that are dead as part of this unusual mortality event, about 2/3 of them have occurred in the mid-Atlantic. And of those whales that have been examined, about 45% had evidence of human interaction, either through vessel strikes or through entanglement. And you can see some of the locations in that area. And here is a juvenile humpback whale that we had seen 2 weeks prior, alive, healthy at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, and then unfortunately located floating within the bay. Okay, so moving on to our study and the work that we've done. We started doing humpback whale research back in 2015, and when we started our work, I have the word humpback italicized here because we really were focused on humpback whales. We had been doing bottlenose dolphin monitoring work prior to that, and because we were seeing humpbacks in the area, we started to expand our efforts into humpback whale research. So we were interested, and again, being funded by the Navy, we wanted to specifically look at a few questions. So what age classes of humpbacks were using waters in and around the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay, whether those animals were exhibiting site fidelity over days to years, and whether humpbacks were congregating in high traffic or high use Navy training areas. To answer some of those questions, we did photo ID work. Many of you are familiar with that process. We collected biopsy samples, genetic work that are sent to our colleagues in other parts of the world, photogrammetry, and using small drones to collect photogrammetric data from the whales. Also satellite tagging was introduced into our study during the second year of the project. I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. And in subsequent years, we also incorporated other types of tagging, these suction cup tags, D-tags, CATS tags, and also different types of analyses, state space modeling, and home range analyses. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff in our talk, but I want to highlight some of the fun findings that we've had. Okay, just to show a little bit more about our area and the boats and stuff of where we're working and what we're doing. On the left-hand side is the small boat. This is the vessel that we use for work that's within about 25 max miles of shore. And it was actually modified a couple years ago to add this top part. And we also added curtains. Most of the time when we were out there, we had no curtains, and it is very, very chilly. So that's probably about this area when we're using this boat. We also have a concurrent project that goes on where we're looking at offshore species of whales. So I've included some information from that work here as well, because it's cool, it's fun to see. And so this is Norfolk Canyon here. It's about 65 miles offshore, and this is kind of the offshore zone that we use. And when we go offshore, we'll use a larger fishing boat. This is one of a couple of boats that we use. It's a very comfy boat. It has a bathroom, which is very exciting, especially compared to our nearshore work. So over the last 12 years, we've completed 268 surveys in either the nearshore or offshore, those are nearshore or mid-shelf, and 133 offshore surveys. We also have aerial support. This has been incorporated into our surveys since 2018. It's been sporadic. The funding for it has been on and off. So initially, these were some systematic surveys to finish up a project that was going on with the Navy. However, in the last few years, we've had aerial survey support really just dedicated to helping us locate high priority species. If we can locate a right whale quickly, have that aerial identification on who the individual is, then that helps our tagging boat know who that individual is, determine what the best course of action is for our goals, and then be able to get to the whale quickly. We use two different planes for that. One is the, spoiling all the secrets here. One is the Cessna small plane, and we've actually been fortunate to start working with the only twin otter aircraft in the entire Navy fleet. It's based in Patuxent River, Maryland, and they've been really excited to be partnering with us for some of this work. Now I can show you this one. This is what we've seen. So this is labeled in or ordered from most frequently encountered to least frequently encountered species. We've had 20 species of cetaceans. This is both from our aerial and our vessel surveys. If we didn't ignore, bottlenose dolphins, a lot of the time they would definitely be at the top of the list, but sometimes when we're going out, we don't always record every bottlenose dolphin sighting simply because we would just never get very far. There's a lot of bottlenose dolphins in the area. So that ranges from all different baleen whale species to some pretty cool Adonis species, 7 different baleen whales, 3 beaked whale species, and as you can see, the occasional harbor seal, and 3 different species of, or at least 2 different species of sea turtles, and a few that go unidentified. So some of those whale species were even surprising to us, including sightings of blue whales. So in 2018, we saw our first blue whale, and that was followed the year after by another sighting from our plane. So we wrote up a short note about those observations. We were really excited. And then since then, we've had 8 additional blue whale sightings, or 8 additional individuals over 6 different sightings. And I'll show you a little clip here of a blue whale off of Virginia and doing some feeding behavior. Now, some of the blue whales we've seen have been smaller individuals, but this was definitely a good size whale with a full belly. And that was one of 2 blue whales that we satellite tagged as well. Okay, we maintain a number of different photo ID catalogs. The humpback whale catalog, we have 386 individuals. I'll talk a little bit more about that one momentarily. We also have in-house catalogs for fin whales and sperm whales, and we contribute our North Atlantic right whale sightings to the North Atlantic right whale catalog. We've seen 103 different individuals off of Virginia Beach since we've been doing this work. We have a pilot whale catalog that is curated by our collaborators at Duke University. Danielle Waples has done that, and recently she has included that catalog in Happy Whale, which I'll mention Happy Whale a little bit coming up as well. And then our bottlenose dolphin catalog is online as part of the Mid-Atlantic Bottlenose Dolphin Catalog, hosted on the OBIS platform. And then just a handful of individual minkies, blues, sourbees, goose-beaked whales. And we had a number of sei whales that we saw a couple of years ago that we shared with Northeast Fisheries Science Center. We just haven't gone through those ones just yet. Okay, so I mentioned the Mid-Atlantic humpback whale catalog. If anyone is familiar with the Mid-Atlantic bottlenose dolphin catalog, this was kind of mirrored in that image. It was originally developed by the Virginia Aquarium, and the goal was to digitize some of their historic data that had been on slides, also to integrate stranding data and to allow for matching between different organizations. And it also had a secured login for users. So if you were a participant of this catalog, you could log online and then see your photos and compare them to other areas of other participants who were part of this catalog. But after the folks who originally developed it left the aquarium, it lay dormant for a little bit until our group, HDR, along with NAVFAC, were able to take on this curator role. And the idea was that the curators would manage the catalog. And in 2024, we hosted a meeting, and you might see some familiar faces in there, including Melissa's, to just kind of get everyone back together, determine if this was still something that we wanted to pursue, and also just kind of get everyone back on board after a few years. And we ended up working with Ted Cheeseman at Happy Whale and the folks at the Duke Lab as well to integrate this fluke matching algorithm from Happy Whale and put that into the catalog. So we can take advantage of that matching to different sites and actually to the entire Happy Whale database. And for those of you familiar with Happy Whale, let's see here, there are over 118,000 individual humpback whales on Happy Whale. Of those, about 12,000 are from the North Atlantic or the Atlantic Arctic. So it's a huge data set. Anybody can go online and look up a whale or upload a photo and see where that whale matches to anywhere in the world. So since we've put our data online in there, we have, let's see, I mentioned our 366 unique humpbacks that we've seen off Virginia Beach. Well, 193 of those match to other places. Some of them are just within Virginia Beach. The Rudy Flipper tour boat is out, so they may have seen the same whale as us. It goes up online there, but we've had some really cool sightings, one as far as Iceland, which was really exciting for us to see. Okay, and just really quickly, one example of an individual that we had seen back in 2014, this whale known as Mojo, uploaded the information, and I actually had this slide from a few years ago, and then I went back in Happy Whale to see what's happened since then, and there was a whole bunch of new matches. So it's really cool. You can track individual whales through time, and again, anyone can go create a free account and just browse through different whales. Okay, so through the cataloging efforts, we also document a lot of different injuries. And as many of you know, the North Atlantic right whale catalog estimates that over 85% of whales, North Atlantic right whales, have scarring from either vessels or entanglements. Fortunately, our numbers are not that high, but we do document a lot of different injuries in our whales. These are just several examples on 2 different fin whales, and 4 different humpbacks, and of course a right whale with injuries that are obviously from propellers. All right, I'm going to switch gear and talk a little bit about our excuse me, satellite tagging efforts. We use 3 different types of tags with our whale species, and the first type of tag is here we go. These are satellite tags. These are wildlife computers, tags that attach through air rifle essentially. They have darts that attach to the whale's dorsal fin or other parts of the body, usually the dorsal fin for whales that have dorsal fins. And typically we get about, on average, 2 weeks of data from those tags. I wish we could get the longevity of some other species from other types of tags, but whales are tricky individuals. We also use these suction cup tags. The one in the middle, the larger one, is a CATS tag. It has a camera in it. The other 2 are D tags. And since we've been doing this work, we've tagged a number of different species: humpbacks, fins, sperm whales, right whales, blue whales, minkies, and 1 sourbees. Thank you. Apparently it's obvious I'm hoarse here. And excuse me, I don't want to go too much into details on all of the numbers, but as I mentioned, on average, we're getting about 2 weeks of data from these tags. It's been as short as just a day or 2. This is a little bit outdated, but these are just our humpback tags. Some of them stay very close to where they were tagged. We have animals staying within just 5 miles of where they were initially tagged, whereas others go on very long walkabouts, but most of them stay on average about 36 kilometers from where they were tagged. So when they come into the Chesapeake Bay area, they tend to stay in that area. Not a lot of them are moving too far during that time period. And these are, each red dot represents an Argos location from one of the satellite tagged humpback whales. So as you can see, we had a couple that went very far away, a migrator, and one couple that went further north. And what's really interesting here is this is inside the Chesapeake Bay. So I think we were really surprised at those findings of how far some of the humpback whales were actually going into the bay. And if I zoom in on this map just a little bit, then you see kind of just we call this the blood splattering mat. It's very Dexter-like. So all these red dots around the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. And one thing that's interesting here, you can see this is the seasonal management area for right whales. It actually stops right here, right at the mouth of the bay. So we have seen vessels that are moving into the bay. They reduce their speed here, and then after they get past that, they speed right back up as they're trying to make their final transit to the port. So the current speed restrictions that are in place, we already have not thought have been effective enough, and so the potential that these will be gone entirely would be very unfortunate. A number of years ago, we put out a publication on the first 3 years of our work, and very similar to what I've just kind of gone over, that most of the animals, nearly all, spent time in close proximity to shipping channels. 25% of all of the model locations were within shipping channels. So these whales not only are just happen to be there, they're actually seeking them out. Their fish, their prey are congregating in those channels. So it kind of turns into a recipe for disaster, especially when you have young whales who maybe don't know all the rules of the road yet, that are coming in looking for food and hanging out in shipping lanes. And just quickly, I'll look at some of the dive depth information that's here. You have the 1 tagged whale, that was the migrator, so they were a little bit different than everybody else. That whale had a number of very deep dives, but not surprisingly, most of them are staying at the depths of the water that's in that area. Most of the part of the Chesapeake Bay where we are is shallow, like your waters here, so 30 meters or less. So most of the whales are staying in that zone. And whoops, go back for a second here, kind of showing the overall dive depth was, the mean was 17 meters and the duration was about 3 minutes. So these are short, relatively shallow dives that the humpback whales are making. And if you just take out that one migrator who kind of messed the whole figure up. And then you get a little more uniform look at the dive depth here for these whales. And what I want to show is that where that dashed line is, that's 15 meters. And that is what is considered the maximum draft of a commercial ship, is 15 meters. So that goes down that deep. And it's been proposed that whales are at risk of collision when their dives are within that 0 to 15 meters. And if I blow this picture up here, I don't know how good everyone's eyes are, but there's a humpback whale right there. So fortunately, we observed this whale pop up right there. Ship went past, he popped up again, phew, but it's not uncommon to see these types of very close approaches. All right, pretty picture from our drone. This is a yearling North Atlantic right whale that was tagged back in 2021. We followed this individual for a 17-day deployment. It was tagged off of Virginia and made its way up along the coast of And what you're going to see in this graphic is a red dot, hopefully. Where's the red dot? Oh, it's already up there. Okay, it already started. So it's going to start back again. Here he is down below, and what you're seeing, all those blue lines are AIS data that was integrated into this map showing the amount of traffic, shipping traffic, that a whale has to encounter as they're making their way up. So this particular whale was very interesting. We actually followed her up the coast collecting data. Because our tags are Argos data, we can collect additional information from them with a special little satellite receiver. So we followed her up. We know she made it safely to where she was going, but when you see it like this, it is very alarming, and especially again for a juvenile whale. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about another pair of North Atlantic right whales that we encountered. This is two individuals, Caterpillar and Smoke. These are both adult female right whales. We encountered them off Virginia Beach in 2020. With the drone launch, that gave us a nice bird's eye view. We could tell who the whales were. They were reproductive females, so we knew we wanted to approach for a suction cup tag. This is a view from our GoPro, closely approaching, and there goes the tag. So now we have a view of what the tag is seeing on Smoke as she goes underneath the water here. And at one point when she pops back up, you'll see her pal. Beautiful sunset. There's Caterpillar off to the right-hand side. And then another view, you'll see Caterpillar kind of passing right over her and giving her a little touch there. So what we didn't realize at the time was that Smoke was pregnant. She was spotted with a calf just over a month later in Georgia. Here's Smoke with the tag on her back and a little bit of audio from the tag. Unfortunately, this tag went on just before sunset, so we got a little bit of data, but then it goes dark when the sun goes down. But we were fortunate to encounter Smoke again in March, and she brought her calf with her. So this is another sighting a few months later where they just happened to be, we caught her on her way migrating down and then caught her again on her way migrating back up. So really cool to see that whole process. And I'm going to switch gears one more time just to show some fun sightings that we had a couple of years ago. I know there was this really cool oceanographic event that was happening in the spring of 2024. I know it was happening up in this area as well, but there was some cold water hitting some warm water, and it was creating these really great feeding pockets for a lot of baleen whale species. So just some pictures that we collected during that time of, there we go, of some fin whales, some sei whales, right whales, all humpback whales all congregating in one area. And we were fortunate to capture this event. We had been offshore in May. We were coming back. It got foggy. Pretty much thought our day was over. And then we encountered a right whale. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. We ended up going out 10 more times during the next couple of weeks. We had 97 Baleen whale sightings of 294 individuals. So this is a lot of whales in a condensed area, and it was a pretty exciting time. Like I mentioned, the water temperature was cooler than normal. We're working with team at Rutgers to figure out why this happened, when will it happen again, how are ways that we can predict when this happens so we can take advantage of it in the future. Maybe you can alert people, ships, hey, this is happening. Let's make sure we're avoiding the area. But it was a very productive couple of weeks. And I will show you two of the movements of two fin whales that were tagged during that time as they were moving along the shelf break. So you can see one of those tags lasted 23 and a half days, the other 18 and a half days, and they pretty much just worked all along the shelf, which makes sense. As I mentioned, we were seeing it off of Virginia Beach in our Norfolk Canyon area, and then all the way up the coast, up until I think Hudson Canyon as well, where these similar activities were being seen. All right. If the video of the approaching a critically endangered whale in a boat made you a little nervous, you're not the only one. So we've recently started using drones to deploy suction cup tags on whales. And I want to show a clip of the first tagging that we were able to accomplish with a fin whale. So this is the view from the drone. And tag drops. The fin whale, I love the little pecks going out. So very less invasive. It allows us to hopefully approach the whales in a safer way for us and a safer way for the whales. And we're looking forward to continuing to use that technology in the coming weeks and months. I think this one we probably did 2 or 3 months ago, and recently got out our first sperm whale tag using the same method, and just posted a little video about that online as well. And I wanted to point out this picture. This is a submarine and a fin whale right inside the Chesapeake Bay as well. So in summary, we know we have baleen whales. At first, what we were seeing was a seasonal presence of humpback whales, but as we've continued to push further out into the mid-shelf waters and offshore waters, we're seeing that we have baleen whales pretty much year-round in our waters. We know that their habitat, especially when they're inshore, directly overlaps with high traffic shipping, and that can be a recipe for disaster, as we've seen in several of the videos and pictures. Our satellite tagging efforts have shown that these whales move in and around high traffic areas used by the Navy, used by shipping, and also west of the Bay Bridge Tunnel, so up and into the bay. And we know that from the dive data that these whales are diving and putting themselves at risk with interactions with ships as well. And currently the speed restrictions that are in place from the North Atlantic right whale management areas may not be sufficient to protect the whales as they are, and there's the potential that those will disappear entirely. So that could put many whales at even greater risk. So high risk of vessel strikes. So as we continue this work into the future, we want to continue to answer questions regarding the site fidelity, the age class. We're trying to expand this, as I mentioned, not just into humpbacks, but to all species. And our last few years have really focused on right whale work and continuing to push out to further offshore into deeper waters. We have a new drone set up, new photogrammetry set up. So we're going to continue to use those and explore some additional data. We have our ongoing different types of tagging, ongoing photo ID efforts. And last one I put in there is publications, because we spend a lot of time collecting data, and as many of you know, you just kind of piles up, and this is not our first part of our job. We have a lot of other things that kind of take precedence, so trying to find the time to get that data published is always a challenge. I know I see a lot of people shaking their heads in the room, so we are really hoping to work on that. So we do have a few things that are currently in prep that we'll be hoping to get out soon, including the tagging of the sour-beaked beaked whales, our fin whale tag results, and some of the tag results from the North Atlantic right whales. Here are some resources that I put up: the U.S. Navy's Marine Species Monitoring website, all of our technical reports, publications. There's video links there. There's a ton of information, and they're actually in the process of working on a new website, which will be getting pushed out very soon. But in the meantime, that link should get you there. We have a Facebook page, our Mid-Atlantic Whale Monitoring Project. So go there, give us a follow. That'll link to a lot of our YouTube videos as well, so you can see what's happening. And then I also put up the note for the public comments on the speed restriction rule. Again, that ends on June 2nd. And I think that's all. So thank you for bearing with me, and please let me know if you have any questions.
We have about 5 minutes for questions.
Can I ask a question? On the humpback whales and the number of sightings, did I interpret that one slide properly that had the number of sightings is the large majority of sightings at the shelf and canyon area versus in close to shore? And then I have one other question. Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to go back to that slide you're talking about, I think, here with the red dot slide. Oop, sorry, I'm going the wrong way again. So the locations that were in that figure are just from the tag data itself. I would say that, here we go. It's a little misleading because everything is on top of each other, so it's hard to kind of tease it out. This SMA, I think, goes out 25 or 30 miles. I forget which, but here's that here. So our sightings have really shifted over the years. I'd say the first 9 years we were doing this work, most of our sightings were a lot closer to shore. The last 2 years, 3 years, we've had to push further out to find humpback whales. So there's definitely a year-to-year variability of where they're showing up. We do see them all the way out to deep water, though, so that does extend the 60 miles from to the beach to the offshore area.
Well, the other question I was going to have is the humpbacks off of Cape May that are seen. Growing up as a teenager in the late 60s and early 1970s, I would go out on a boat with my father, who had a fishing boat, and we'd go 10 to 30 or 40 miles offshore fishing throughout the summer. And it would be extremely rare to actually, I never saw a humpback whale in all my trips as a teenager, but other people would say, oh, we saw a humpback whale. It was very spotty. And now they're coming right in close to shore, and they feed on the menhaden. So my question is, have the menhaden moved in closer to shore over the past few decades to bring the humpback whales in close to shore?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in that. One, just time frame, 1972 is when we had our Marine Mammal Protection Act, which stopped commercial whaling. So we've seen humpback whale populations specifically rebounding over the last 40, 50 years, which is a great thing. Most of those have now been delisted from endangered to just threatened. So we have more whales is one thing, but absolutely, I think that the prey species are shifting, and we're seeing it on a year-to-year variability, and I'm sure over decades as well. If you ask the menhaden spotter planes. They probably have more information on that.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
How long have the speed zones been in effect, and were they actually put in place with some of this research?
So they were, that's a good question. I would have to check how long they've been in place. I think it's only been in the last, does someone know? 2008, thank you. I know there was information that was gathered from other researchers. We didn't have this data at the time, but they definitely worked with, Florida Fish and Wildlife, the folks that were doing the work at the time and could make the best estimated guesses of, or research of where the best places would be. One thing that's tricky with where our area is, it kind of juts inward. So I think it's 30 miles. We just happened, because the Chesapeake Bay goes in, I feel like it didn't quite protect our area enough, and that was something that they commented on, after. Oh, we should have probably extended it a little bit further in that area. Yes, in the back.
When is the U.S. Navy Marine Species Protection Program? What are they doing with the data that's being funded that you're getting?
So one thing about the work that we do and the work that they fund is that it has to be made publicly available. So you'll see that all of our tag data can be found on MoveBank. All of the photo ID data can be accessed through Happy Whale or other spots. So the push is for researchers to make their data available and then to publish on the results of the data. So that's, the extent really of where they quote unquote control it. And we've been very fortunate that the program manager, who's had his job ever since I've been with the company and even before, he was a former Duke University graduate student and very ingrained in the research culture, and wanted to make sure that the program was benefiting people all up and down the East Coast. And actually this program is global, so there's work that goes on in Hawaii and other parts of the world as well. Yes, Patricia.
You mentioned the juvenile not knowing the ropes. Do you have evidence that they learn to stay away from boats?
I wouldn't say we have necessarily hard evidence, but we like to joke that when we're out there doing our biopsy and tagging work, that we're teaching these whales, lessons, because as we re-encounter the same whales, they often become more difficult to approach in subsequent times. So I do think that they are learning, but I think of them as just big toddlers out there, and they're just, a little bit clueless as to what's happening, but the more and more experiences they get, I think they do figure it out. So, and I see Melissa's here, so I think
One more
one
question.
more.
Do you have a question on that?
How do you think the humpback whales are like? How do they like? Are they getting killed or something?
My daughter asked if the humpback whales are getting killed. Unfortunately, some of them are getting killed, and I think their prevalence is that they are more so juveniles that we're seeing. So I think it's the inexperienced whales that are most at risk here, both across species. I think that's a fair statement. So thank you all.